moderating. So today we'll be examining identity as it pertains to food businesses. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs, food editors, people in the food space to tell us how they have kind of been thinking about this relationship, navigating this relationship, because it is quite complicated and there's a lot to get into. So first, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. If you'll say your name, your pronouns, your business, and a few sentences about your identity, however you want to interpret that, that would be lovely. And I will toss it over to Sana. Why don't you start?
I knew you were going to start with me. I'm Sana Javeri Kadri. I'm the founder of Diaspora Co., which is a single origin spice company that's really rooted in equity and decolonization. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as an Indian immigrant and a Mumbai native. I'm third generation Mumbaikar. A lot of pride over here. Yeah, that's me. And I'm gonna pass it on to Andre.
Thank you, Sana. Hi, my name is Andre Springer, and I am the founder and queen of Shaquanda Will Feed You. My pronouns are whatever you feel the energy that comes out to you. So whether that's he, she, they, queen, or alien, I'm completely fine with it. I started my business some years ago and now I'm at Hot Bread Kitchen. And my mission is to create delicious, spicy foods that kind of bring equity and visibility to queer and Black people. I am a Black West Indian. My family's from Barbados. And so I try to bring that sort of cultural and queer flavor to the shelves. And yeah, I'm gonna pass the torch along. Oh, who's next? Nafy.
I knew it. Hi, everyone. My name is Chef Nafy Flatley. As you can see, I'm wearing my chef's coat. And I am the owner and founder of Teranga. So Teranga is a food, beverage, snack, and prepared meal company. So we import local, organic, and wild ingredients from Africa and other parts of the world as well, and we combine all those to make it kind of familiar with people's tastes. Like here in California, we use the ginger to make it more familiar, or we use almond to add it in bars so people can kind of familiarize themselves with some of the taste while adding some African taste into the mix of everything that we make. I'm a she, her, and I think I already said I'm from Senegal, right? Did I say that? Yeah, so I'm from Senegal, from West Africa, and the word Teranga means hospitality, friendship, just putting everybody together, just right now in this Zoom, all of us talk, share our knowledge, share our as well. And let me see, I am gonna pass it along to, and I cannot even see the names anymore. Margot. Oh, no, it's Enshalla, sorry.
Hi there, thank you. Enshalla Anderson, and I have worked in the branding space for over 15 years. I like to think that my contribution in building brands is really about sort of unlocking the power of storytelling to really engage an audience and draw them in. My pronouns are she, her, and presently now I'm at Google Cloud, but have worked on the agency side probably for the last like 15 years. So big brands, small brands, I think at the end of the day, it's really all about creating a lot of love for what you do and bringing in that consumer target that can share in your passion. And I guess the next person, and please tell me if I mispronounced it, Khushbu?
Khushbu, yeah.
Khushbu. Okay, cool.
No worries. I'm Khushbu Shah. I'm the restaurant editor at Food and Wine Magazine. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as Indian American. I am the child of immigrants in America and a proud member of the Diaspora and a big fan of Diaspora Co. Spices also. Well, shout out to Sana. And the work I do at Food and Wine is, at least the way I like to think about it is I'm trying to make food media a more equitable and diverse space. And I
Shout
guess
out to the 10-page Diwali feature that Khushbu just made happen.
Yes. Well, thank you all for being here. This is an awesome lineup, and we will dive right in. So I think that most of us are aware that branding and how you brand yourself is as much as part of your business as the actual product that you're selling. However, for many times for entrepreneurs of color, this can be a bit of a tense relationship. As writer Tara O'Brady wrote in her piece, the color of my skin is sometimes confused with the scope of my talent, that came out earlier this summer. Quote, writers of color are expected to make a living off of their skin, off of our family's private rituals. My family's history is fair game for interviewers or commenters. Each question, a scratch on my skin to determine the exact depth of brown. So similarly, for those of you who have businesses that integrate with your identity, how are ways that you can showcase the identity that you're proud of, and that's part of your brand naturally, but and also part of your business pitch without making it the only aspect of your brand that people focus on? I know, easy question right off the bat. Feel free to unmute yourselves and jump in.
Hi. So, like Caribbean food is generally known as spicy food, even though there are many dishes that are not typically spicy, and each island has its own sort of food identity, even though there are kind of similarities due to ingredients or produce that are sprinkled around the Caribbean and into some parts of South America. For me, like showing the robustness of Barbadian hot sauces is such an integral part of my cuisine. And I think for me, like that is so important to talk about and so important to have. And onions are such an important part of, I think, most people's cuisines if they don't have an allergy to it. So I think finding a commonality between, even though a flavor or a certain thing that I cook might taste different, we still share ingredients that are, that are the same. And, I have a very niche area because hot, spicy food, not everyone can eat it, but so many cultures enjoy it. And I can tell a story through the way I sort of like articulate spice. And so while maintaining my identity and my integral Barbadian kind of like flavor, I can still nuance it and still have like a story to tell about spice that can connect with other people. So even though I'm still being very true to who I am, I can still connect and heat up things a little bit, if you want to say.
I can jump in. I have a lot of thoughts about this. So in 2016, when Diaspora was founded, I was 23. I had recently come out of the closet. A lot of the reason behind founding Diaspora was wanting to carve out space where I could feel 100% welcome and that people like me could feel 100% welcome, which meant that obviously my identity was front and center to Diaspora. And in 2016, saying that you're a queer spice business was not hip like the way it is that it is now. I got a lot of hate for a really long time. And I think it's only in 2020 where I'm seeing, or actually, I'll give Andre some credit here as like, I mean, he was really the like other queer food business owner that I saw out there. I was like, okay, there's somebody. And then, but now in 2020, like there's Omsom, there's a bunch of other brands that really call themselves queer food businesses. And I find that so amazing that in these 4 years, we've come to the point where that's now like an accepted category. And it's not, I don't think Omsam is getting emails being like, what does sex have to do with sauces? So I think my big charge is that even if the identity that you're leading with feels unrecognized or invalid in where we are today in 2020, it will not a few years from now, like we need you, you are the future. That's part one. And then I think the second one is, I totally feel like as BIPOC who are leading with our identity, it's easy for our identity to be what's focused on rather than our expertise. Yes, I am young, but I've also worked with spices since I was like 0 years old, and like have studied supply chains for over a decade. So I definitely consider myself a spice expert, but I've had to push back against media for so long who want to, like, the headline is always like, young queer woman of color starts spice business, not like spice expert starts spice business, or like supply chain expert starts spice business. And I don't really have a good answer to that. I think that's just something that's been really tough and that I haven't navigated well yet. So if anybody else has ideas.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really beautiful segue, Sana, of like when there are power imbalances present, when you're navigating through these relationships, whether it's with media or suppliers, retailers, buyers, what are some ways that people here on the panel have successfully, or perhaps a challenge that you want to talk about, been able to work through those relationships so that you can say, hey, I want my branding to look like this. I'm proud that I'm queer, that I'm BIPOC. But at the same time, I also want you to, give me the attention, the shelf space, the pricing that I deserve, even though, you might have an upper hand in this sort of relationship or this situation.
I mean, I'll jump right in. And for me, what's been difficult to try to incorporate my identity and the products I import from Africa is like a lot of African product people don't know, but yet it's part of a lot of ingredients. Like if you just use, let's say, shea butter comes from Africa, but it's utilized in a lot of different products, but people don't really know about it that much. Baobab, which is one of my main ingredients that I use in almost every single thing that I make. It's in part of my juices, it's part of my meals, but people don't see it that way. When you say, when I'm doing demos or I'm talking to people and I said, oh, my products are from Africa, or I'm going to a store trying to look for a new account, this is products from Africa, they say we don't have a shelf for African products. And then I said, well, do you have products for ethnic? And I don't want to actually even put myself in that group, because for me, I mean, I'm making just good, delicious meals, So a lot of places I have challenges. They say, we don't know where we're going to put you. We're going to have a meeting with our, team managers and figure out where in the store we're going to be putting you. And I said, do you have, let's say for the juices, let's say, I'll say, do you have space for superfood drinks? I say, you put me right there. Baobab is a superfood. Just put me right there. So those are little things that I've, well, not little, but those are like some challenges that I've been facing, and it kind of like really puzzled me up when I look at, why can't we, can't you find like a space? And just like what Shana was saying, why can't you qualify me as a spice expert? Why can't you qualify this product as a superfood drink? Why just wanted to qualify it as an ethnic group and put it somewhere where people maybe don't even want to go, because there is this connotation about ethnic products not being, where they're supposed to be or how they're supposed to be treated, usually. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because there is sort of an inherent bias to categorize. And I think one of the realities is sort of like in this sort of construct of categorization, like where do you slot, or do you break out of that category to sort of force a different interpretation of the landscape? I think one thing that is always so important in branding is having clarity of like, what are the core pillars of your narrative? I thought, Sana, it was so interesting. You sort of identified some components, which was, sort of sexuality being a component, being of the diaspora. But then you very much were very clear that it was about being this sort of spice expert. And so I always sort of like tell people, as you're thinking about the construct of your narrative, be very clear what those core pillars are that define you. It could be the aspect of expertise. It could be the aspect of where you're sourcing your ingredients from, because it enables you to sort of own your narrative. It doesn't resolve the back and forth of where you get slotted, but it does kind of put you in that position of sort of, at least some control and authority in terms of like how you want to frame your story, which is so important. But I still, my mom's family is from the British Virgin Islands and the Dominican Republic. My dad is from Alabama. There are always ingredients where like people don't know or unclear. And I think sometimes that's both the joy and the challenge with food is there's always an education component as people get sort of keyed in on new things. So just
and ultimately, right, like, whether your story, whether it's, me writing a story as a good journalist or your story as a brand, you in America, in the West, you have to cater to a white audience to a degree to be successful. That's like the unfortunate reality of it, you know? And the language that you use, like you have to find, I struggle with this a lot, but it's like I have to always find a balance in my stories that feels true to like what I'm doing and what I'm trying to honor, but also can communicate what I'm trying to get across, because it's harder to continue to do what you want to do if like you can't get under other people to understand it, right? This like major, massive audience to like understand it, because at the end of the day, everything kind of unfortunately comes down to like, you know, money, things like that. And if like the larger masses can't understand like what you're doing, you know, unfortunately, you know, baobab then remains, you know, it has to be recategorized as superfood, and people can't just understand it for like what it is. I mean, for example, like I had this Diwali story come out in Food and Wine's like November issue. You know, Diwali is celebrated by literally billions of people, you know, across multiple cultures in South Asia. And like, I couldn't pitch, the first version of the story I
Y
pitched.
la primera versión de la historia.
Oh, the first version of the story that I pitched, you know, it was like a really, it was very much so many unfamiliar things. Like the entire staff at Food and Wine pretty much is, except for, you know, a handful of other people, is very white, you know, and so they have no concept of Diwali except that they call it Diwali, and like they just know it's like festival of lights, like maybe. And so, you know, I kind of had to meet them in the middle and like do a story that was about Diwali in the American diaspora, you know, so it was one foot in each world. It felt true to, you know, what I was trying to do. It was a big celebration of Diwali. It was Food and Wine's first ever feature Diwali story ever in its 40 years of existence. But, you know, it had these components that they understood, you know, like the main subject was someone, you know, who speaks English, who grew up in America, like even the recipes, like kind of have their foot in both worlds. It's like familiar, you know, formats, like unfamiliar flavors, things like that. And it was the only way to be able to get it across. And that to me is like step one. You know, I'm hoping 5 years from now, we can do like that original Diwali story, you know, that I really wanted to do. But unfortunately, these things take more time than all of us want it to take.
Yeah, I feel like you know, especially now that there is a slight enlightenment toward cultural you know, diversity and toward culture and acceptance, and then also of understanding of what different cultures are, like Black Lives Matters, that, you know, we've been living still now trying to figure out things. You know, I feel like for me things have shifted slightly better, you know, a little bit different, where people kind of get a little bit of an understanding, or where I'm heading with all these different spices that I use, or all these different superfoods that I import from all around the world, and kind of trying to incorporate them. I'm not just trying to just force or implement like certain authentic you know, flavors, just that, but then also kind of like engaging different flavors that I find that are local to every region that I am in, like here in California. What are things that people really love and people are used to? Avocados, or if it's not avocados, almonds, if it's almonds, you know, whatever else that I could find around that people's familiar. But I just feel like, you know, this enlightenment that's starting to happen a little bit more and more is kind of easing things a little bit, but there's still a lot of work to do, just like Shushambo said.
Yeah, I mean, Nafy, you brought up that word that is like, it's so hard to describe, the authentic. What is authentic and what does that mean, and how do we relate to it? How do customers perceive about it? So first, a question for the audience, if you're here and attending, we'd love to hear your thoughts on what authenticity means to you, especially when you are shopping and looking at CPG brands. What does that mean? What are you looking for? Does it conjure up an image? Like, are you looking for a particular type of person behind the product? So yeah, if you want to type that into the chat box, please feel free. But for all the panelists, when you think about authenticity, when it relates to your stories, when it relates to your brand, when it relates to your product, what is authentic? And especially when big brands now, especially big box brands, are breaking off into smaller companies or like more authentic looking labels, how do you compete with that? How do you, what does that mean for your business? How do you, in general, how do you approach the idea of authenticity when you are interacting with your brand, with your product, and with your customers?
Can I just hop in for a second on that one? As someone who's on the other side of this, right? Like, I don't own a cool company like all of these, like everyone, a lot of people here. I always click the about page on someone's website, like when I come across one of these brands. So if you are someone with a company and you don't have like a banging about page, like great portrait of you, your background, your story, you know, please do that. Like it is really helpful. More people than you think are going to go and like look at it and want to learn about you. Like I had someone pitch me an Indian coffee. I've been trying to do this like Indian filter coffee story forever. And someone pitched me. I was like, oh, this is interesting. They kind of seem like they know what they're doing. But then I went to the about page and I was like, you're not the company I'm going to feature just yet. Like this is not quite it. Like you're a white girl who loves India and that's great.
I know which company you're talking about.
And that's great. And like the product does seem, it's like, it's cute. But I would rather, start this story off, with someone in the space that it is, it's of their culture. They're the people making money off of it. And not quite someone who's like presenting themselves as like an Indian brand. Like that to me feels unauthentic and like, a little bit dishonest.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with that. It's like, I see like some brands with the trappings of certain signifiers that represents another culture. And it's like, you can really like love and enjoy something and appreciate something, but then when you're appropriating it, are you appreciating and honoring someone's culture and food, or are you trying to sell that person's identity? So like, it's like you selling the food or you selling an identity. So like, if you're not from that identity or that culture or from that life, then it's not your place. I think that's where it becomes inauthentic, because you're not actually selling a product, you're selling someone's identity.
I feel like I've learned a lot about authenticity and kind of how to deal with it within the spice industry from the work of my friend Steven Satterfield of Whetstone Magazine, because the whole point of Whetstone Magazine is origin foraging and like going back to the origin of something. And, in the case of spices, there are certain spices that are indigenous to India, but then there's also spices that came from South America hundreds of years ago. So like, what is an authentic chili if it was brought by the Portuguese in the 1500s? Or what is an authentic nutmeg when, the British brought it to India to compete with the Dutch at great violence to everybody in that system? So I think what I have focused in on more is like, what does the indigenous community that our farm comes from and our spice comes from, what do they call it and how do they use it? And I want to highlight that. So we're onboarding a chili that I call Cibate chilies in December. And Cibate chilies are what Americans would know as ghost pepper, or what is commonly known as bhut jolokia. But bhut jolokia is actually the Indian translation of ghost pepper, because the British called it ghost pepper and then it was made into bhut jolokia. Whereas the Tangkhul tribe in the Northeast, who've actually been like the stewards of this chili for thousands of years, or hundreds of years, not thousands, they call it the Cibate chili. And so it seemed so important to then put all my marketing effort into making sure it was known as the Cibate chili. And I think that's where I chase authenticity, is like, how can I spotlight the stories of my farm partners who don't have the ability to do that for themselves? Because beyond that, authenticity is really a construct of like white people trying to make us BIPOC, like, I don't know, be more excellent and chase these ladders that change all the time.
I want to hop on that too, about like how, like with being authentic is always equated to like less value, where it's like a sauce or a spice or a cuisine shouldn't cost as much as like something like a non-POC person would make or come from, which I find like so problematic, where there's just so many amazing ingredients and amazing preparations and so much training that has gone into like making something. And, like it should be, priced the same or even more for that matter, So the whole thing with authenticity that bothers me is with cost, or like with like how people expect something to be less, that it should cost less.
Okay, I want to hop back on that, which is, a lot of the time, authenticity comes with certain brand signifiers and branding signifiers. And we often get told that, oh, the Diaspora brand is like so hip and trendy and bright. And that's a signifier of like often that you're like a D2C millennial brand, and yes, we are that, but also like my branding is about Indian colors of like holy pink and marigold yellow. And actually, if folks took a step further to understand the root of that brand actually comes from something very different than the assumption that it comes from being like an Instagram brand, they would understand that it's naturally authentic. So I feel like questioning what your brain assumes is visually authentic and why is important, because people's design references come from all over the world. You might not have that reference.
Yeah, for me, like when it comes to the price, I also get the same. To people say, "Oh, why are your juices this much?" And I say, "Well, the baobab is something that I have to import. It's not something that grows. Or can we find it in here in the US?" I said, "No, it's only certain parts of the world that you can find, especially in Africa." And or if I say hibiscus, let's say an example of hibiscus, that's something more familiar that people can maybe identify with. And then I said, well, the organic or sometimes wild, and the people who pick these ingredients are not just pickers. These are families. It's like it's a whole group of a community people that that work and really have this as their way of living. And so I always tell people, it's not just because it's just a hibiscus, but it's more around that hibiscus that I get here. I support families, I support other people, and then when I bring it here, I try to keep it as is and make it as simple as possible. A lot of times people always say, is this really authentic? Like, is the way you making it the way it's supposed to be made, or are you using some American style or techniques? Are you adding other techniques to it? And so that also kind of like makes it a little harder when it comes to the pricing. And they say, if this is not really the authentic way that you guys making it in Africa and you making it the American way, then it's no longer authentic for me. I would not want to be purchasing it or something like that. So it's all ties also to the method, how the hot sauces, like Andrea was saying, are made, real 100%, sauces that, spices that you use, mix it together, and then making it. And is that really what they would consider authentic when you have it on the shelves?
I think the price stuff is even tougher, right? When, your origin story, your identity is associated with something that's not Eurocentric, right? That is like a country that people see as cheaper, more affordable. Like the dollar suddenly converts to like 40 rupees, right? So India is like a cheap country. There's like more visible poverty. There's a lot of poverty in America, but it's just not visible in the same ways that it's visible in some of these other countries. Places where they go in is like white saviors, this kind of, that narrative, it's so much. There's already a problem in America where, this is also another piece I'm working on, where we just don't pay enough for food. Like the percentage of our income that we pay towards food is so much smaller than even other countries with similar GDPs. And like the real cost of that is a human cost, right? It's the labor that we're not paying for. Like we don't understand in this country, like we just expect food to be like ridiculously cheap in a way that it's like not actually feasible. So then when you compound that with like food from a culture that people believe you don't see as like something elegant, regal, high-end, French, Italian. If you rebranded all your stuff as like a fancy French brand, people be like, oh yeah, $17 for that juice, no problem. But it's because it's from a country in Africa, like it's associated with Senegal, they get the what's the like the images of like white people going in and having like multiple African children on their back, building their villages and like saving them. It's like that's the idea that kind of like it ends up going through their brains, and they just don't think that that is worth the same amount of money as like something from where they go vacation, eat croissants, and like hang out in chateaus. And it's bullshit, sorry to swear, it is bullshit, but like it's another uphill battle that I feel, unfortunately, brands, especially run by people of color, like face, no matter how cute and how great and how high quality the product is.
Also related to this idea of authenticity is because there is of this kind of like this whiteness of like chasing the most authentic thing, whatever that even means, you get kind of relegated into this exotic idea, like if you're very authentic, then it's also kind of this exotic fetish of like who you're doing this one technique that, you know, only 5 people know from this one country. And then you become pigeonholed in a section, whether that's the ethnic aisle or whether that's a part in a food magazine, you know, that you can't kind of, you're not seen as like to have mass appeal. You know, you're always kind of stuck in this one category. So my question for the panel is like, how do you combat that? How do you deal with this exotification of your product, even when everybody can use spices, you know, whether it's from India or other places? Like that's a product that everyone can use. Everybody can use hot sauce, or at least the people who can eat spicy food can eat hot sauce from everywhere in the world. But, you know, combating how exotification happens throughout the entire supply chain as you're dealing with relationships from media to your buyers.
I like to say, if you want to put me on the ethnic aisle, you could do that, but put me also in the hot sauce aisle too. So I have 2 shelf spaces. Thank you.
For me, I honestly just decided that I didn't want to be in the spice aisle at all. And it was a big reason that we really pushed for direct to consumer, because I felt that like buyers at these big grocery stores didn't understand the value of what we were doing. They didn't understand why it should cost as much as it did. And they didn't want to hear it from me as like a young brown woman. Like if a white guy showed up and told them the same thing, or like some chefy dude, they'd be like, yes, let's go. Like chef driven spices. And so I stopped trying. I mean, don't try where you're not welcome. And for us, like direct to consumer has been fantastic. And I think it even, especially in my industry, there's such deep, complex stories to be told around spices. And that tiny jar of spices doesn't tell you that deep story. And so really direct to consumer allowed us to tell these much bigger stories in a way that worked for us. Then the pandemic hit and we kind of looked around and we're like, yep, this is us. Okay, we ready. So I totally hear that.
I think that's such an interesting point, because I feel like, you know, people are conditioned to have things cost a certain amount if you think about it being on shelf. So, you know, for Sana to talk about like the spices, and if she were like next to McCormick, like your proposition is so radically different from that. Like that is not the frame of reference. However, just because of like shelf proxy, that would be what you're working against. And that price differential is so extreme. So kind of finding an alternate channel makes the most sense. I think the other part, which is so lovely, is the fact that your stories are richer than a package label. They're bigger stories. There's, you know, when you told the story of like this, like pepper, I mean, just that alone means that you need a bit more of a canvas to kind of like draw people in. And so kind of then pursuing an alternate channel, like being able to kind of like have a website and do more, it just allows for a level of engagement and connection that's remarkably different. And sometimes it's okay if things are not just so traditional CPG, you know what I mean? Because sometimes, and this is the case anytime when you're dealing with a premium priced product, you have to help someone understand why. We're already dealing with the factor that for certain countries, there's an expectation for it to be a certain price point. And then other countries, it's expected, you know, like you say, it's from France and it's an elevated price point. You see that not just in food, but even in other, with fashion and with beauty. And so, you know, sometimes this issue of provenance, like it can either be a brand lift or a tax. And I think it's helping people understand that it's not a tax, but it's an opportunity to sort of help them understand why this costs what it costs, and bringing that narrative to the fore. And sometimes that means like different channels, because existing channels, just like there's a mental disconnect of why this would be a different economic model.
Yep, just like you guys all said, that's the same thing that I've been experiencing myself. That's why I started working more on farmers markets, so I can tell my story a lot more and then like explain to people what really teranga means, the word first of all, and then also all the different ingredients that I use, whether it's tamarind, whether it's baobab, which a lot of people now are starting to learn and know a little bit more about, and then also some of the Senegalese dishes that we make. and a lot of times like using farmers market has been really a great tool for us to do that and explain and tell people this is the story, this is what it is. And then from there on, actually, a lot of the times I don't really need to do a lot more work because it's word of mouth. Other people will tell other people, oh yeah, I heard about this brand Teranga and this is what they do. This is what Baobab is. And then, oh, go to their website, or if not go to their website, go to one of the farmers market at Kwesa and you will be able to hear the story. She will tell you what it is. So, it's like this extra work, like Andrea and Shana, all of us here trying to say, like, you have to do this extra work where you have to explain your story. Why is this authentic? Why is this ethnic product? Why is this the way it is? And why is it expensive? Sorry, there's a hand that's keep calling me. He mummified himself right now and then trying to tell me to look at him with all the tape. Sorry about that. So yeah, I think I lost my train of thought because of Zachary.
Khushbu, could you also talk a little bit about on the food media side, like what sort of best practices, I suppose, or how you've been trying to teach both white writers and POC writers on better portraying POC and authentic brands, however we want to define that, in a way that doesn't kind of pigeonhole them, that doesn't exotify them, that doesn't kind of tokenize them like that?
Yeah, it's this stuff is really tough, right? Food media is having a reckoning that I think a lot of people are extremely aware of, and I think it's really it's due time for all of that. I feel like this is kind of like multifold. So if you are pitching your brand to a food editor, it's really helpful if you can tell your story like very clearly. Like, can you explain to me just in like a paragraph what you're about? Unfortunately, it's really hard to be able to like boil yourself down like that. But I think that just based on the sheer number of pitches that food editors get, you have to be able to like kind of like be able to tell your story really quickly with them to like be able to get more coverage. But as far as it goes, on the other side of things, I feel like a lot of us are like working, to make sure that, if we do like a condiment roundup, it's not just like ketchup, mayo, mustard, it's like we'll go broad, and it's just a daily condiment, that like we use. Like it's just trying to like de-exotify a lot of these things as just being like special occasion, whatever. These are, when we talk about small business owners are really excited about, restaurants really excited about things like that, we're talking about like we're trying to just expand what that definition like includes compared to like what it's been like in the past. Like, so we're not only going to include Sana when we're talking about just like Indian business owners, or like only include her in a Diwali story. Again, it's like this is how it really works. It's like making sure to talk about Sana when we're if we want recipes just for like, or we want to talk about using spices just in another an Italian story. Like, say we want to do something with about cacio e pepe, we might recommend Sana's peppercorns in that situation instead of just only using her when we're talking about like a, I don't know, like a butter chicken or a samosa story, right? So like it's also on food editors, not just on you. Also at the end of the day, as like a business owner, it's on food editors also to like think about it. But if it doesn't hurt to also kind of help food editors like be able to process, how to use your products and your brand maybe outside of like what they might think of it as, because not everyone is so willing to do the work naturally, or or is so capable of like it's fascinating being in these rooms sometimes.
Yeah, something else that we've been thinking about throughout the food entrepreneurship forum this week is kind of on this point, Khushbu, is like, how do we meaningfully engage with small brands in a way that isn't just like that one-shot deal? Oh, we highlighted them real quick for our BIPOC week. Like, we're good. I think especially over the summer, we saw a lot of like, let's support Black-owned businesses, let's support Black women, and that's great. But how has that been going? Like, how has it been going as like an ongoing support? And also, sometimes when there's like a surge in business for business owners, that's also like a very stressful and perhaps like not a great time for how you're dealing with your supply chain. So these are challenges that I think people have been facing for a long time. So we want to talk about sustainable solidarity. Like, what does sustainable solidarity look like when, as entrepreneurs, you're thinking about people being in solidarity with you, as a writer or an editor, sustainable solidarity when you are working with these brands? For consumers, what would you want to see in terms of sustainable solidarity?
Well, at least as an editor, we try and give smaller brands heads ups, or we'd talk to them and make sure that they're usually in a place where they can meet, the demand that might come because of the publicity. At least I try to never, we just put a chai company in our November issue, and I spent many back and forth emails making sure that their supply chain would be okay, by the time our issue dropped, that if they were in it, they wouldn't run out of product, it wouldn't crush them, that they were ready for what might happen, because of this.
The company was frantically emailing me being can you rush me some pepper? Can you rush me some cardamom? I was like, okay, we got you, chill. Andre also does the same thing to me.
That's actually really funny to know on the other end. Well, great. It's a great chai. So there's that, but again, it's sustainable solidarity, emphasis on sustainable especially. And that for me, at least as an editor, means repeat coverage, in different ways. So we might highlight, someone, say we might highlight Andre's, hot sauce in a hot sauce roundup, right? But then maybe we also do a feature with Andre where it's a dinner party with Andre, where we get to know Andre and his friends and how he likes to live, how he likes to cook. So it's not just about just the product itself, but it's about the people, behind the product also. That's really important to me, at least, to be able to highlight kind of the full scope of that. Someone is not just their brand, right? And so for me, sustainable solidarity is covering people, multiple times in multiple different ways, and not just, hey, we're covering it's Lunar New Year, so let's get out and all the Chinese brands, that to me is really, it's making sure to cover them within the context of their cultures, but also cover them, in different ways, if that makes sense, outside of it. And Andre, we should have a dinner party story with you because it sounds fabulous.
I would love that. I can come as Shaquanda or as Andre or both.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful tie into the idea of making sure that we're actually acknowledging all the intersectional identities of these brands, and then all the different aspects of the product itself and how those relate together. Our small business owners, any thoughts on just what you would want to see in terms of sustainable solidarity?
I think Andre and I have dealt with this a lot in the pandemic, which is that people are all about the BIPOC food businesses, and we really communicate how long it's going to take. In every corner, we let you know that this is going to take these many months, and that if you want the good stuff, you're going to have to wait. And yet, 2 months in, the kind of nasty vitriol that we have to deal with. I mean, I did my customer service person's job for 1 day, and I was too sad to go back to work the next day. It's awful. And I think, unfortunately, Amazon has set those standards and what I really lead with is that we are building global farm to table supply chains. Please think about that for a minute. We are not working with some hip exporter in a country who's working with a bunch of farmers. We are working with a farmer who wouldn't have been able to export otherwise. You want access to him? Please wait. We're doing this as safely as we can. And that has just been a long 6 months, man. We're finally at the end of it. I think Andre and I are both at the end of it and just whew. That's one. And I think the second kind of thing that I've been mulling over for a while is how do we create better words for ourselves? Yes, I'm a queer Indian immigrant starting a direct trade single origin spice business, but I pay my partner farms roughly 6x more than anybody else does, even the folks who are considered direct trade or single origin. So but we sit on the same shelf where we're considered the same. So how do we start to create words that are more specific to the work that we're doing that is specific to us? I don't know. And I think, in my world, I'm really borrowing language from specialty coffee and and bean to bar chocolate. That's the world that spices are influenced from. But we have a whole other history of injustice and horror that some of those commodities don't have. And so the work that we're trying to undo is very different. And so how do you create words that are specific to what the work that you're trying to do? I don't know, but I think that's really the next generation of branding and like working on your business identity is making your own words. The White Bar Coffee Roasters did it, so we can too.
Sana, would you also be willing to talk a little bit about partnerships and how that relates to solidarity? Because there was definitely some partnerships that you had mentioned in a pre-panel about how it didn't feel like solidarity. Yeah, can you just talk a little more about that?
Yeah, I won't get into drama too much. I'll keep it brief, but I think around the time that we were in this big civil rights moment, and there was suddenly, you know, everybody wanted to partner with like BIPOC brands. We had a partnership with a white business that, to be honest, like for years had ignored us despite like making contact repeatedly. Like, we'd love to work with you, love to work with you, love your stuff, would love to work with you. And like complete crickets, had sent samples for years, total crickets. And then in this very tense cultural moment, suddenly was very interested and wanted to do a thing together. And shortly after we released a collaborative product, shit blew up. And we were immediately kind of caught in it. And I was just like, wait, I didn't know about any of this stuff that they were going through. Like I knew maybe 1%. And I dealt with that with another white woman just months before that. So I think my lesson from it was that as a business owner, I so desperately need my bottom line to work. Like I need to make a profit. And therefore we're keen to partner with anybody who brings dollars in the door. But because of our identities, we're also dealing with this like complicated thing of social capital and how you're buying and selling it. So I have really learned that like to be very wary of partnerships with, usually in my experience, white women who are keen for the social capital that like decolonized spices brings them. And I don't know that I could have learned that without being totally scarred. Like it's hard to turn away from like $8,000 in sales in a single day when that's coming in, because then it feels like, well, the going's great, everybody loves me, yay. And then when the going's bad, you're suddenly like, oh, I should never have accepted that $8,000 of blood money. So I don't know how that's a learning moment. If it is, I'm glad. For me, it was just, this is how I got burned. Don't let it happen to you.
Andre and Nafy, do you have any like partnerships, advice, or thoughts as you're also expanding your products and your brands on what solidarity can actually look like, or hopefully should look like when you're working with others?
Yes, since COVID-19 started and then the also social unrest started, I've had a lot of people approach me and saying that we want to write a piece about you. We wanna partner with you, and then have your products be available on our website, and also write a piece about you just to promote not only a woman, Black woman, and also a woman entrepreneur. And the question I always ask them, I always ask everybody that wants to partner with this kind of circumstances, is this just a one-time partnership? Is it just like a one-time gig? Or are we going to be doing this in the long run? Because if that's the case, then I rather not really participate in it. Yes, it's a check of $10,000, but then that $10,000 is it, that's it done. What else are you going to be? I don't want to be used as a mummy. I don't want to be used as someone who's just going to be the you know, me as your tool to achieve your goals, just because, oh yeah, we are supporting a Black woman, yeah, we are supporting a minority, and then these times are so, you know, it's so sensitive right now that, you know, if they do that, they might get more. Who's really like getting advantage of it? Is it me, or is it actually really them? So I always wonder. So I've turned down a few of them just because for me it doesn't just make me feel good, and I've done it because I wanted to do it for also other Black women and minority brown people, you know, businesses as well, to tell them up front, I am not doing this partnership. You're not going to use my face, my color skin, my gender, just so you can achieve what you are trying to do. You know, if it's a $10,000, I don't care. If 15,000, 20,000, it doesn't really matter. I have three kids, and they're all male, and they're mixed kids, and I would like to give them a good future. I would like to give them a good education. I would like to make sure that they also have good values, and these are the things that will advance that towards that goal. So Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of jumping off of that. I feel like there's also this issue that when you're, a person of color, you're Black, you're Indigenous, like it's really easy to fall into this scarcity mentality, right? That this is my only opportunity. Like, I have to take this. I'm not going to get this $10,000 check again. Like you feel like these opportunities might not come again. And it's so easy to take them even after someone like Nafy has turned them down for these very reasons, because it's a bad deal ultimately. But like, that's the thing that I think every person has to remember, is that no, like there is always room for you. There will always be room for you. It might not be on the timeline that you expect, or, the situation that you do, but if you are doing good work, your audience will find you. Like there is space for you. And even if someone else is doing, like, say you do want to also launch like a really great, hot sauce brand or a spice brand, Sana's not going to be like, no, I'm the only girl that can do spices. Like there's room for you also to do it, because there's so much work to be done, And so I hope it's something I have to remind myself of too, when I'm like, oh man, like, are they really going to take another Indian? But it's because like that is white supremacy at work, right? Like that's them telling you, no, there's only space for one of you and only when we decide. And it's like, no, that's not true. And people also deny, or like are in denial of, the capital that minorities have, the power that minorities have, especially when minorities really back something. Like that is some real, like you will find your audience, and they will be happy to spend on you and your products when they really believe in you and like what the work that you're doing. And so I hope that everyone just like remembers that if they ever feel like in their gut that an opportunity is not great, but like it just might be their only opportunity, like it's just not true, other opportunities will come, that even if you don't believe it.
For me, also, the other thing I was going to, sorry, Sana. The other thing I was just going to add to it is like, when you look at this partnership, and I'm sure Shana is pretty familiar with this because she's been through different partnerships, and I have also as well with like big brands actually too. And so what has happened is the list of the protocols of the things that they are asking you that you need to have or done. My picture will be available, or my product will be available for them to use for X amount of years and times. And then you're like, do I feel comfortable having you use my story and you're just giving me $10,000, right? I don't know why I keep using $10,000, but you're using $10,000 and you're gonna be using my face for infinity. Like it's like forever. You're gonna use this, and whenever you want, you can just say, oh, Black Lives Matter is back up again. Let me use this. Nafy, we already paid her $10,000, well, let's use it again. So it's like those lists of, you have to be very careful on the list of every single elements that they put in their contract for you to feel really like, say, hey, is this really worth it, to selling myself like this to these different partnerships? Go, Shana.
Oh, well, I recently did a video with a shoe company and learned that lesson again the hard way, of like, this shoe company is going to be able to use my face for years to come. I mean, Airbnb still uses my face 4 years later. They didn't pay me $1. But anyway, what I was actually going to talk about was somebody emailed our customer service, and we get this email a lot, being like, why do you support Fly by Jing? Like, aren't they your competition? Fly by Jing is like a Chinese Sichuan spice company. I'm so glad that Fly by Jing exists, like as one of 2.5 women of color in spice sourcing. Like, I want 20. There is room for all of us. And I think Jenny and Khushbu were really speaking to that scarcity mindset of like, if another one comes, they'll steal my story. I definitely think, there's times when stories are stolen, that's terrible. But as long as like credit is given to like who came before you, there's space for all of us.
I agree.
At my nonprofit, we've been doing a lot of stuff about scarcity. So I just want to add that when Khushbu said white supremacy, something that immediately came to mind is this idea that for POC, you're often felt like you're also interchangeable, that like, oh, well, if you don't accept my $10,000, we will go find another Sana, another Nafy, and they will take, and that's not true. They will never find another one of you. And I think that, but it's really hard to keep that inside and remember that when you are faced with some emails that could be disparaging and pretty nasty and kind of essentially try to bully you into taking a deal that isn't great. So that is also just another way that scarcity manifests with a lot of people of color. But I think we are almost at time, so I'm just going to ask one last question before we go into our Q&A, since there's a couple that have popped up into our Q&A box. Switching gears a little bit, just before we go into Q&A, if everybody will share a quick recent business success or an inspiring fellow business owner. Sana, you just shared one, but we can do another, so that we can end on a really positive note, and then we'll go into Q&A. Anyone feel free to go.
Is it a cop-out if I say I'm inspired by all the brands here today? I really am. I really do love all of their products. I was a fangirl already before I joined this panel. I will shout out, there's a couple cool Indian candle brands that have popped up. I just got sent one for my birthday tomorrow. Some of my friends bought me one from Kishmish, which is really great. It's a jasmine smelling one, and it's cool to see like a couple South Asian candle brands actually pop up. Like, I love that that's now, like, it's like scents I feel like are also so tied to identity, right? Like, especially when you grow up, and also my name means nice fragrance, and so I think I'm particularly sensitive to scents. But you grow up like having people tell you that like scents that are so familiar and homey and like beloved to you are like gross or disgusting or whatever. And so it's nice to see some people kind of like reclaim that and make some money off of it in the process.
We have been partnering with, since we kind of spun off a little bit and pivoted with, because of COVID-19, and start making prepared meals. We partner with the Homeless Association here in San Francisco Bay Area, where we actually cook a lot of meals for them. It's not so much about the price, how much they pay. It's just so we are part of the community. We are part of the healing, and then how can we support the homeless community here in San Francisco. So we were making a lot of different meals. At times it's like 500 meals, and we distribute them to different homeless camps that we have here in San Francisco. So that's been really fun working with it, a lot of hours in the kitchen. But it's just like, when I go out and then I give these meals to these homeless, and you say hot meal, they looked at you like, hot meal? You say hot meal? I say yes, hot meal. It's not like just a cold sandwich, like a turkey sandwich. This is actually a hot African meal with spices, delicious spices in it. And they just, they're just like super surprised and very happy to see us. And to shout out, I mean, I just admire Shana so much. Andre, I haven't really known too much about you, but I'm sure also you want my heart as well. And I feel like, you both are very good representations of what you are doing, and hooray to all of us. And then let's make this world a better place, for sure.
I guess I'll share an experience. I'm come at this from a very different perspective, but I live in Jersey City, and during COVID, my sons and I love to go to 99 Ranch Market. And I feel like I have learned all sorts of snack foods that, like, I'm not even quite, because I can't read the label, but it's been awesome. And so, I think, like, for me, having grown up in a Caribbean household and sort of had food that people didn't understand, or like, what is a plantain? Like, you're just like, there's so many moments of translation. But I've come to a place where I love, like, food discovery. I love that. And so to kind of have this time where we're like sort of trapped in the house, but we would sort of like just go together to the store, and then it was like this bonanza of snacks that we would come back with. And so it's been awesome just from a discovery perspective. And I think for me, that's always really exciting to sort of see more, experience more, and learn more. So I guess that is not necessarily a brand, but it is a store that I'm a big fan of.
I'm a big fan of Fauzia's. I love her jerk seasoning. I love her food. And I really have enjoyed like playing around with it, because now my partner and I are working on her packaging for her. So like probably in about a month and a half, you'll see some new packaging from her, but I do believe she has the best jerk seasoning out there right now. So look out for Fauzia's Delights.
I think for me, we just launched a masala dabba, which is a spice box that's inspired by my grandma's spice box. And we partnered with a brand called Teapoy on it. And something that I've learned is that Indian manufacturing is one of the most unjust industries out there. The labor law violations, just the labor violations in Indian manufacturing, especially in metal, are really huge. And so I love that Teapoy has their own studio. They have salaried staff, and they are currently working with craftspeople from all over the country to look at indigenous cookware techniques and looking at how to make those very craft techniques into factory processes and kind of doing it in collaboration with the craftspeople. So I'm very inspired by their work. Teapoy is Tiipoi. I personally just bought 7 of their curry pots to give as Christmas presents. Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to also say, I don't know if people know this, but it's on my branding, but I use Sana's turmeric. I haven't for a while. It really is the jump off. And so it really kind of differentiates my sauce from a lot of other sauces that use turmeric.
And I have 12 jars of Shaquandas at all points in time in my house.
Amazing. So we have a couple of questions from the crowd. Let's see. From Fernando. How do you balance your goals and your message towards offering a space for people of color and femmes and LGBTQIA+ in those communities and not feel like you're excluding or against welcoming the white audience as well?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah, how do you balance your goals and your message towards offering essentially a safe space for people of color, BIPOC individuals, the LGBTQIA community, and not feel like you are, not make it feel like you are excluding or not welcoming of the white audience of your one that might be buying your product? I just want to point out, I'm not going to answer this question because I don't have a product line, but I just want to point out that this question does center a white experience in the question itself.
So I know a lot of my customers are white, a lot of my customers are Black, a lot of my customers are Indian, a lot of customers are from South America. I tell my story as it is without any, I'm not gonna mute myself, or I'm not gonna do anything that's gonna make me feel like less of myself to make my product more approachable. Because I think when I start doing that, then in the end, it's not a product that I think one should have. So like, if someone doesn't wanna purchase my product, in the end, I want everyone to buy my products because I got bills to pay. But at the same time, I'm chilling without it. So I'm not gonna like make myself any less than I'm doing it now. Cause like, I think oftentimes we're the ones that are excluded from things. So I'm more than happy to give more space to POC companies and customers.
I definitely approach this in terms of like, I'm first creating a space that's for us by us, or, I create a space that was for me because I didn't feel, I worked in kitchens where I didn't feel welcome. I worked in food marketing where I didn't feel welcome. So Diaspora was about saying, this is my little mountain. And like, I'm going to sell some really good spices on this mountain. You can come if you want. And we definitely have people who are not down with some of the stuff we post about. And like, I will refund you. That's okay. There's limited supply of what we have to offer. If you don't want it, I'm pretty sure other people will. Being a polarizing business, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think trying to appeal to everybody, is interesting, quite honestly.
I think what's really interesting is both you and Andre have talked a little bit about your customer target and being very specific about who you serve. I think as we sort of bring this full circle, there's this aspect, and I know we were focusing on authenticity from the perspective of sort of geography, But then there's also this aspect of authenticity in terms of being true to yourself. Like, what is your vision for what you're creating? And also, as you think about sort of a brand as a house, who are you welcoming into that house? And I think it's being very intentional about, like, you know, sort of the guests that you're bringing into that house and knowing who you're serving. I think that's how you craft your narrative. It's how you think about kind of your points of difference in the marketplace. But I think, you know, oftentimes when people go to that place of extreme mass appeal, there is such dilution in what they're trying to say that at the end of the day, they may appeal to a lot of people, but not necessarily stand for something specifically. And you know, it's sort of like when you go to places and they make a lot of different types of food and you're like, okay, like what's your center of gravity? Like, I don't think I need to eat here because like there seems to be no specialization. And so I think at the heart of it, it's really knowing like, what does your brand stand for? I mean, I always think of branding as like three principal questions. What do I stand for? What makes me different? And why should people care? And when you think about that last one of why should people care, also being very like mindful of like, who are you trying to draw in by being compelling? Because like people always talk about differentiation and distinction and so forth, but like it has to be both distinct and compelling. And I think you want to make sure that you're arriving at a place of resonance that really matters for your target. And if your target is not mass market, that's okay, but it's being very intentional about who you're, you know, kind of pitching your product to and who, you know, if they show up, great, but you know, it wasn't necessarily the target. So just a consideration there as you think about some of the, I would say the foundational elements of like building a business model.
I mean, for me, it's just like how I'm trying to actually bring a product that I'm familiar with, that I grew up with, that actually did do good for me as a sickle cell trait person, having certain condition health-wise. And I'm like, okay, this is the reason why, I'm going to be bringing this product. I went to school, a lot of people telling me they are anemic, they feel sick, they're this and this and that. So there's a market for that. So I'm not so much saying like, I'm just going to go target this type of people this time. I'm trying to see who is health conscious, who's this person that doesn't want to be anemic anymore, who's this person that actually wants to stay healthy every day, all the time, and feel good about themselves. It happened to be products that I bring from Africa, from a different continent. I've had people telling me, I don't eat products that are not from the United States. I said, then you're going to starve to death because nothing comes from almost in the United States.
I'm almost nervous to ask this question with the short amount of time we have remaining, but I feel that it is related to what we were talking about. So why not just open it up? From ATAO, how would you advise to sell products that does not come from your culture without compromising authenticity? And I think, Andre, you talked about this a little bit about the idea of selling an identity, but yeah, for anyone who wants to answer this question.
Just real quick, I think if you're selling something or you're doing anything with something that is not from your culture, you have to do it with a place of respect and acknowledging, like Sana said, the people that come, that people that have come before you, got to acknowledge the history, the story, and also really have be incredibly self-aware of your positioning and your, any privilege that you might have compared to this, culture that you're doing, that you're selling a product from. Just as I believe that, anyone from any background can write about any other culture, I don't think I should only be able to write Indian stories. Like I think I should be able to write about Korean food, about Japanese food, about Russian food, just as I think someone, who's Mexican should be able to write about Indian food also, whatever that is, but it has to be done with a place, from like a real place of respect, and not just a place that puts like profit first, or this idea that like, you're the only one doing it correctly or better, than everyone else.
Or cleaner, as it tends to be.
Yeah, that one is so gross.
I've had a lot of white business owners reach out to me about this question. And the way I push them really is, I don't think you shouldn't be in business. Like I the same way, like I spent more time cooking in Italy than I did in India. Like I want to be allowed to do things that encompass my full experience. But how do you make sure that the culture that you're profiting from is profiting more than you're profiting from them? So, you're sourcing a turmeric tahini for your, I don't know, salad dressing or whatever. Like, how are you sourcing the turmeric? How are you sourcing the tahini? And when you look, and I really think sourcing is the future of everything, and like how you source matters. But like right now, all the tahini suppliers in America are Israeli, and they all have exclusive contracts with Ethiopian farms, which means that like the power of this product, which is sesame seeds and tahini, is really like held by a select few, and nobody is disrupting that. There's power to really disrupt that and make sure that power is going to the right places. Future business idea, somebody do it. So yeah, just how does that culture really profit from what you're trying to do? Then we can talk about, whether it's valid or not.
I mean, for me, I have a lot of people, I have a lot of people seeing that I sell, a lot of my products are based with baobab, and I have other people who are not from Africa coming to me, like at fancy food show, and coming to me and say, oh, we're representing this organization, and then we sell baobab. Would you like for us to sell you the baobab? And then I said, do you know anything about baobab? They said, well, it's in our product line, and would like to be one of your producers, one of your suppliers. And then I said, it kind of feels odd or weird that you wanting to sell me this product when actually you don't know very much about it. I said, I was born in the baobab. I was, I even sometimes tell them that I was born around a baobab tree, which is not true, but I did dance around a lot of baobab trees. So I guess that counts, but, so I'm just trying to figure out, what are their points, if they are trying to tell me, I would like to be your supplier, but do you really know much about how like the baobab powder or the baobab fruit should taste like and things like that? So you always surround about what knowledge, what kind of things that they know really about it. It's okay if you sell it, but tell me if you really know really your homework. Did you do your homework? How can I trust you that you could, be my supplier on that?
I'm just going to jump in quickly to answer Adele's question in the chat about cleaner that Sana mentioned. So and please correct me if you have a different opinion or feeling about this, but I believe generally when cleaner gets applied to usually BIPOC cultures, brands, things, it's this idea of somehow because a white owner has taken it over, that the Chinese food that they're making is healthier, it's less processed, it's better for you, it's more wellness driven, it's cleaner, healthier, better. Yeah. So with that, we're at time. I want to say another big round of thank you to all of our amazing panelists, as well as Hot Bread Kitchen for organizing all of this. This is recorded, so you will be able to watch it later, or if you missed part of it, or someone else wants to watch it, we will be getting those links out soon. So thank you all. We'll also have links to all the panelists so you can follow them, make sure to support their businesses. Holidays are coming up, and you know that people need hot sauces, spices, juices, all of those things. So again, thank you, and hopefully see you soon.